Today's show is sponsored by the law offices of Armand Gregorian. If you're injured in a car accident and need proper guidance and representation, reach out to the law offices of Armand Gregorian, 1-818-404-0333. Guys, we've said this before on the show. We're saying it again. This is a cell phone number. You could literally text this number. If you're injured in a car accident, reach out to Armand Gregorian, 1-818-404-0333. Also, today's show is brought to you by The Cabinet Spot. If you're remodeling your house and you need custom cabinetry or prefab cabinets, reach out to The Cabinet Spot. Tell Vic we sent you at 1-888-495-0210. The Cabinet Spot. Reach out to Vic. Lastly, today's show is also sponsored by the Glen Arden Club. If you're interested in networking, cigars, scotch, and a great environment, reach out to us. We'll connect you to the boys at the Glen Arden, and you'll become a member here. Smoke with the WiseNuts, smoke with a great network, and build your network. Happy Monday, everybody.
My part, TGIM.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I feel like we've done this today before, but hey, what do I know? Hope everybody's happy. Oh, I hope everybody had a phenomenal Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are still thankful today as you were that day when you were stuffing your faces with turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, and whatever you guys were eating that night.
Ham.
Honey baked ham.
Yeah. Did you guys end up getting it?
Yeah, we did. Elle pre-orders that shit all the time. Every Thanksgiving, she has to pre-order it and then goes and picks it up, or else the line that you posted was ridiculous.
Well, yeah, that's what. Then she messaged me. She goes, "It's a huge line." I said, "Yeah, but if you pre-order it now, you kind of get into a little bit shorter line." But my wife had pre-ordered it a few days prior because they had a kids' friendsgiving at our house, and then I showed up at 6:30 a.m. thinking there can be nobody there, but
I just show up to eat, man. And actually, and surprisingly, I had wine that night.
Well, of course you show up to eat. You don't even have your own Amazon app. Of course you just show up to eat. What are we talking about here?
We'll talk about that as well. But Mariya
can we?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
of course. Mariya Melkonyan's here with us. We want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday to be with us. So you're criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, right?
That's right.
So let's go back a little bit in time very quickly. Because you made quite a leap. You went from prosecuting people to obviously now defending them as well. What made you get into law? Or actually, when did you come to the States, and then what made you go into law?
Oof, okay. That's a packed question. I came to the States in 1992 with the family, with my parents, obviously, and my sister. And I guess better childhood years were here. And I decided to go to law just randomly. I was in business school in USC studying finance. I thought I was going to do corporate stuff, stocks, bonds. I love that stuff. And then I took a business law class. And one of the things we needed to do was go watch a trial. I actually walked in to downtown court and happened to walk into one of Mark Garagos's murder trials just randomly. And he was defending a kid who went to the same high school as me. And I watched a full day and I just said, okay, I want to go into law. Still not having any thought of criminal law. Just thought, okay, maybe corporate law since I'm on that path. I went to law school and then again, criminal law class, just fell in love with it. Ended up applying for an internship with the California Attorney General's office, which was a very coveted position. Only like 2 students were selected from each law school. And I got picked. So I got to work on criminal appellate briefs for the state of California. Loved it so much. My supervising attorney at the time said, "You have to become a prosecutor. If you don't have me as a backup." Like, they usually write letters of recommendation and support you on your path after your internship. And he said, "If you choose anything else, I'm not going to support you. You need to go into prosecution."
Did he see something in you? Is that why?
Yeah, because we got to do oral arguments in court. So we would go from appellate court to appellate court. At the time, I was in law school in San Diego. So we got to, in San Diego at the time, was controlling San Diego, Riverside, and Orange County. The Attorney General's office was handling all those locations. So I got to do oral arguments in all 3 locations, which is a very rare experience for students. And I had a case published, which is another big deal because that means a law was changed or you had some effect in written law. And so my supervisor was just, we had a good relationship, and he was like, "You have to go into prosecution and I'll help you get there." So my next internship ended up being in the city attorney's office in San Diego, again, criminal position. And then after that, the DA's office for an internship, and ultimately my first job as a DA. So that's literally all I've done in law school is criminal stuff.
And DA, you weren't in LA County, right?
No, I was in Riverside County.
Okay, because a lot of people when they hear DA in Southern California, right off the bat they remember Gascon for some reason.
Mhm.
But which you get, I don't blame them.
For some reason.
We see I was being sarcastic, but we saw what he did in the past. I'd say how many years, not only in Southern California but in San Francisco as well. Guy practically destroyed the state in a matter of 8-9 years, roughly.
Yeah, when 6 out of 4 homes have been hit up by burglars, you're bound to know the name Gascon, right?
Well, I mean, who else would you? Well, now that he's gone, and we have a new DA coming in, Nathan Hochman, we're hoping that things do change and law and order is actually put into place.
I've met him personally when he had just decided to run. Actually, had an opportunity to talk with him and ask him a bunch of questions. And what I liked is that he was listening. He met with a lot of important people here in Glendale, and everyone got to pitch him their worries and their concerns, and he was listening. And what I like about him a lot too is he and his dad were both defense attorneys in the past, and he himself used to be a federal prosecutor. So he has both sides. He's seen both sides, and I love that he has kind of that well-rounded, backup because he gets it.
So it's kind of like you. He experienced both ends
Yeah.
of it. So I mean, as a prosecutor, well, as a former prosecutor, do you see an advantage being a defense attorney now?
Absolutely. I mean, look, when I was a prosecutor, that's all I did is prosecute, prosecute, prosecute. And then you learn to just disregard everything that's coming from the other side because everybody has a story. Everybody wants to have their client look innocent or they need mercy and something's going on. So you kind of stop listening to people and you do things your way. And everyone's guilty in your eyes. If you filed a case, you see the evidence. So you kind of look at it from that lens. You forget the human side of things. I hate to say that, but it becomes the reality. So then going on the other side, you realize, it's not so black and white. Even the guilty ones need a break sometimes. And not everything is just, this is the law, these are the facts, that's it. And when you see both sides, you kind of understand that there are times when the law should be bended a little bit because of certain situations. And I think you need to see both sides to really understand and comprehend that.
So I mean, you've dealt with all this prosecution, and then now you're a defense attorney. Have you ever defended anybody where you knew that they're possibly guilty?
Of course, all the time.
And how
Did they actually tell you I'm guilty or I did the crime?
Because there's attorney-client privilege, right?
There's attorney-client privilege. Everything they say to me stays with me. I'll never give you a name
Even
and
if
tell you.
even if they've broken the law and they have
yeah.
actually murdered somebody.
Oh yeah, of course. I just assume. Okay, when my clients don't tell me anything, I don't ask, did you do it? I never ask that question from a client. I don't want to hear it a lot of times. Very rarely do I need to know. Because before I even ask them if they're guilty or not, I hear the accusation, I look at the facts, And I mean, I don't know, every defense attorney, I guess, can work differently. But for me, I tell them, well, in order for you to be not guilty of these charges, this is what I would presume would have happened. Many different scenarios. If there were witnesses who would have witnessed this or that, that would have probably been a defense. Now tell me your story.
So are you afraid of that kind of tripping you out during the case or the hearing?
In what way? What do you mean by that?
For example, if they say, yeah, listen, I did do it, but I need you to get me out of the situation.
Look, if they do it, then the focus is, could the DA prove it? At that point, you tell your client respectively to shut up and sit there, because I'm not going to, put him up and ask him a question that I know he's lying to. So you treat it differently.
Well, that's why I was asking. So, is it a situation where you possibly might trip yourself out?
I don't know that I like that phrase, because it's not tripping me up. I just focus on something else. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out another way of getting the information I need to get out. But I may not put my client on the stand. I might do it another way, because I'm focusing now on, does the DA have enough evidence to prove that my client is guilty? And I poke holes through their case. So at the end of the day, I don't have to prove that my client is innocent. The DA must prove to 12 people on the jury, and every single one of them has to say my client is guilty for them to have a conviction. So if I can poke holes in the case and then even one juror says, well, I don't know, I can't vote guilty, then I got a hung jury. They don't have a conviction. They can either retry or give me a better offer.
Is it the same way if your client is innocent? All 12 have to
say innocent.
Say innocent.
All 12 have to, well, they never say innocent. It's not quite like
Not
that.
guilty.
But all
Not
12
guilty.
have to say not guilty. Then it's a clear not
But
guilty.
if it's
They're
11
done.
non-guilty, 1 guilty, it's still a hung jury.
It's still a hung jury. If it's 11 not guilty, like, for example, I just a couple months ago had I don't know if I could say the word.
Say the word. It's okay. How many
I'll
minutes
keep it politically correct.
Joe, how many minutes are we in?
About 12
12, we're
minutes.
We're
So
good. Go ahead and say it.
I had a case involving a rape. Okay, and my client, who I actually thought was innocent, we had a hung jury where 7 of the jurors voted not guilty, 6 voted guilty. But the DA ended up dismissing the case because there was no way, if we did another trial, they could have had another 12 people vote guilty. And they knew that.
It was split in half practically.
That's a huge gap in crim law. If the jury is split in half, there's a big problem for the prosecution's case. That means we did a hell of a good job, and our client could have gotten off completely.
As in the prosecutor screwed up the defense. As in
the defense did a good job. I like to think of it as the defense.
Well, yeah, that's what you're saying. You were like, we did a good job. It's like, all right.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So let me ask you this now. So as a former DA, did you ever convict anybody where you thought, did you ever convict anybody who was actually innocent?
Absolutely not. That would be a crime. If as a DA, I think someone is not guilty and I proceed to try to prosecute that person, I am acting unethically. And that's it. Your bar card. Like,
but isn't it the people against XYZ?
Yes, but we have a moral. Every prosecutor, when I say I should say, every prosecutor has a moral and ethical obligation to pursue a criminal charge only and only if they truly believe in their heart and their mind, individually, that the person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, that they can actually prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Because, say, for example, I have a case, and I've had the situation where I had another DA who looked at the case and said, well, I don't think I can prove this case. I just don't think the evidence is there. I looked at it and I thought, I for sure can prove this case. Like, I know he's guilty. And in my mind, he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I took on that case and I won as a prosecutor. Now, I've had a situation similarly where I've looked at the case and I thought, guys, I don't think we have the proof. He probably did it. There was that, but I don't know that I have enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that right there, he could be innocent. I'm done. I'm not touching that case.
Did anybody else touch that case?
If I make that, well, I'd like to think that I was respected and liked enough in my office where my word counted. So if I said that to a supervisor, they usually followed it and they dismissed.
Just like that,
yeah,
dismissed.
Absolutely, because if they're not, if you can't prove a case as a prosecutor, that means they could be innocent. Let that go.
So there's not like say a dozen prosecutors looking at the same file, and maybe you think you don't have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, but maybe 8 or 4 out of the 12 or 10 would think, no, I think this is a valid case.
Of course, that's exactly how it works. So if somebody else does in the office, like, for example, anytime there's a murder case, anytime there's a very heavy publicized case, for example, usually at the DA's office, they'll do a roundtable with the chiefs, with the upper management, and they'll talk about the case. Obviously, if they think there's enough, there's enough. I'm talking like there's been individual situations where if I come to the conclusion that there's not enough, they usually agreed with me because I've been doing it for such a long time and I've done so many jury trials. I just know. And when I tell them why, they usually agree with me. But yeah, of course, like I said, I've had a situation where I looked at something that someone else wouldn't want to take, and I've taken it and I've done it.
Yeah, because I'd like to think it's not kind of like a Russian roulette where if the prosecutor happens to be trying to prove or get some type of promotion, they're like, yeah, I'm going to take on every file, because it's kind of a relief to know that there's a few eyes looking at the case, not just one prosecutor.
There is. Obviously, it's not going to happen on every case. So the smaller cases are not going to be looked at with a magnifying glass the way the bigger cases are going to be looked at. And you might have some people that just don't have the experience to understand how much they have. But that's why they start off with misdemeanors and small cases. And a lot of times for prosecutors too, it is a learning experience. And when they get those not guilty verdicts, they realize nothing is, it's not as clear cut as they thought it was. There's another side to things. And so that's why they start out with misdemeanors. And nobody that just gets hired gets this like huge case that's going to put somebody away for years.
How long have you been an attorney for?
I want to say almost 17 years, 16 to 17.
As like a DA, what was probably one of the most shocking cases that you've dealt with?
Oof, I've done so many shocking cases. I have to focus on the most recent ones because that's what I remember fresh. Like the very last case before I left the office, last couple, I did a murder trial where I prosecuted a man who just stabbed the mother of his children multiple times. And I'll never forget that case as long as I live, because when when he was stabbing her, she was trying to divorce him and leave, and he wasn't having it. And they had an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and they had a newborn. So when mom was taking her last breath as dad's stabbing her in the kitchen on the floor, mom was yelling out the kid's name. So the 11-year-old, and I don't want to say his name, runs out to the kitchen, sees dad standing over mom with a knife in his hand. Mom's taking her last breath, and he sees the blood just spilling out of her mouth. That's when she passes. And dad turns to him in shock because he didn't expect the kid to come see him that way, and says, she was going to leave us. Those were his words. And so then the 9-year-old wakes up and comes and sees mom that way. And the reason I'll never forget that case isn't the murder. I've seen a ton of murders. I've personally stood over and watched a big number of autopsies myself because of my job. But this particular case, those kids were separated from their family because mom died. Dad was in prison for life because I put him away. And the mom's sister and the grandma couldn't handle all 3 kids. So they had to split them up, and they all lived in different towns. And so, that always left a mark on me, because every time I would see them, I had to prepare them for testimony. I had to meet with these kids in order for me to put up a kid on the stand and ask them questions of what they saw. Imagine how traumatic that would have been for the kid. It's a really traumatic experience to have an 11-year-old look at his dad sitting right there, who he loves very much, knowing that that guy took his mom from him and his entire life, because now he lives alone without his siblings. And I had to make friends with these kids and be able to do that. And I think that's why I won't forget it. It was just really bad.
I mean, talk about traumatizing.
Yeah, and
those kids are traumatized for life, bro. They're never going to be the same. Yeah. Could you imagine not only witnessing
your own father, your flesh and blood, kill your mother, who's also your flesh and blood, and then you're separated from your siblings. You said an 11-year-old, a
And
7-year-old?
an 11 and 9, and then they had a newborn. I can't remember if she was 1
So
yet or
11, 9, and call it a toddler or
Yeah.
infant. Oh my
Which
God.
one did the aunt and the grandma take?
The mom or the grandma took the 11-year-old and the baby, and then the 9-year-old went with the aunt.
Okay, so they were still with the family.
Well, with the baby. Well, yeah, I mean, mom and aunt, but the two brothers who grew up together, sharing the same room their whole lives, had to,
Right.
and now they see each other occasionally.
It's still separation.
Yeah, it is.
I don't care. I don't care if you're going with grandma and auntie, and they still see each other every day. It's separation.
It's,
So
but it's
there's
better
a
than foster care or anything else.
No, I understand, but there's a bond there. When you share a room with a sibling and see them every day, whether it's walking to school, coming back from school, having lunch, having dinners, spending the time together, you create a certain bond in a relationship. Now, the bond in the relationship itself, throw that aside, the kids got traumatized seeing something where even if they were to create some sort of relationship amongst each other, where it's like, hey, you're my brother and we could talk about this, we could talk about that, they're mentally and permanently damaged and scarred, where anything that's brought up, that scar, that wound is going to be there for the rest of their life. They need to see a therapist. They need to see somebody to help them cope with what they saw.
And I think they did. The DA's office does provide, those kinds of services for victims' families and things like that. So
What
Yeah.
is it like? Because I've never interacted with the murderer, not that I know of, at least. What is it like looking into their eyes, into their soul? I mean, what do you see? What do you feel?
look, they're people. They're regular people, and at the time when I was prosecuting this guy, I obviously thought exactly what you're thinking. How does this guy sleep at night? And what kind of a man can just take another life? But then I have also defended, as a defense attorney, I've defended people who have committed murder. I've defended people that committed attempt murder. The guy didn't die, but it was the same thing. And I got a not guilty and walked my client out of the courtroom where he was looking at like 40 something to life. Because there was a reason for what he did. Like my client had stabbed the boyfriend of his mom, where moments before that he saw the boyfriend, trying to strangle his mom. So did my client do that immediately? No. Did it take a few minutes, and could it have been looked at as revenge, attempt murder? Sure. But I think there's so much going on in a person's head in those moments where you're seeing your mom still go with the person that's abusing her, that he snapped, and whatever happened, he wasn't really consciously understanding what he was doing. In his mind, he was protecting his mom still. And so I got him off. So do I look in his eyes? Absolutely. I hugged him after we got the not guilty verdict, and I cried with him in happiness. So it's a really tough question to answer. I recently had, an Armenian guy I represented who was accused of murder, and they're human. Especially the really young ones who make mistakes. At the end of the day, they're people. And unfortunately, it could happen to people that we know and love, that we sit with every day. And no one knows that these people can kill. And I think it can happen depending on the circumstance. It's really scary. And I hope that it doesn't happen, or no one is in that position to act that way. But unless we're talking about one of those serial killers, that you see on TV, if it's just a person who got in a fight, got in an argument, or snapped or whatever, they're just people.
Those I agree with, yeah, because I think any human being is capable of killing when it comes to that moment of whether it's you're defending somebody, a family member, loved one, whether it just happens to be in that moment something can trigger you but I guess my question was more so towards, like you said, the serial killers, where it's premeditated, where it's like not one, not two. It's just because the one-time thing, again, not trying to justify anybody murdering anybody, but I could see how it's possible it could happen.
Mhm.
If God forbid, if I something I ever witnessed happening to one of my kids or my wife, I don't think I would even blink twice before I did anything.
Orange jumpsuit right away.
I'd wear the lavender. I prefer
Lavender one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks better on me.
I was thinking lavender or pink one even.
Yeah, I'll look like Barney.
Yeah, it'll
with
bring
the
out your eyes.
But I'm referring more towards
You're referring to something like the Dexter type of killers, basically.
Yeah, like the Jeffrey Dahmers.
Or the Jeffrey
Yeah,
Dahmers.
yeah.
Let's go nonfiction. Yeah. Or let's go nonfiction.
You know, those guys are soulless. I think if you look at their eyes, you probably won't even be able to read into them, right? Because I think they lack empathy. Someone has to lack the basic feeling or emotion of care to be able to take lives like that carelessly. So I think they definitely lack empathy, and their eyes would be soulless.
And I think a lot of it has to do with something that happened to them traumatically as a child as well. Most serial killers, if you look at statistically, a lot of them actually experiment with animals.
Well, that's what I was gonna get to as well. Is because growing up, I've seen certain kids, like for example, neighborhood kids at 4, 5, 6 years old, that had the capability of killing a little animal, whether it was a frog, whether it was a bird. I'm not talking about an ant or anything, but an actual
Mhm.
animal. So, do those kids? Let me rephrase that. So, if you take two kids, one of them who'll never hurt any type of animal, but then a kid who has done that and has the capacity to kill a bird or a cat or whatever type of animal, does that in any way is that a sign that growing up they're going to have less empathy, meaning they're more likely to commit such crimes versus the kid who's more empathetic even towards animals at a very young age?
I think, if you take a look at what psychiatrists, do, is you're right, go into their childhood and see acts like that. I think it's just common knowledge that that's exactly what happens, because the same kids that would kill cats or kill dogs, without a care, ended up as adults, being convicted of murder charges. So it's likely, or even child molestation, things like that. Sorry if I'm using inappropriate.
No, you're okay.
I'm okay now.
Damage is done. Don't worry.
Yeah. But yeah, no, for sure. There's definitely something wrong with a human being who can harm another living creature and not care and laugh about it or make that a sport. And I think all of those serial killers that we've watched movies of growing up, have had something like that
Yeah.
in their background.
Look, see, we always look at the bad perspective of things, where it's like, okay, this person killed animals, or this person experimented with certain animals where there was no empathy, right?
Mhm.
When you look at the reverse of it, I myself as a person, and Armand and Joe can actually vouch for this, and including yourself. When your child was born, you became a different person. Watching a simple movie with a child involved in it, or something were to happen in a movie, and it's fiction, it's not real, it's a movie, you feel something right here, right in your heart, where you're just like, oh man, like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way now that I have a child. So you could look at it in that way as well, because us feeling emotional, seeing something on TV, those people are complete opposite of what we are. There is no empathy, there is no sympathy either, because what they do, they don't even give a shit at that point. Like she just mentioned, you look into their eyes, they're soulless, bro. There is no emotion, zero. And I can guarantee you this: a lot of them don't even feel sorry for what they did.
That's very likely. But where does that come from, though? I mean,
I think they're just chemically imbalanced somewhere in their heads.
because to think, just like where we've discussed over the years, like I don't think children are born racist. My kids have never pointed out to you know another kid and said, "Oh, why is their color, their eyes, or something different?" unless you teach them that. Then now they're even more aware. Oh yeah, that is a different.
Yeah, but I think it's so different for what we're talking about because they can grow up in a very loving family with dogs and cats and all that, and then you see them abusing these animals or killing the neighbor's, dog or cat or whatever, and that's not something that they saw in the house necessarily. Not every kid that ends up that way is taught that in the house, unfortunately. So I feel like there is something lacking. I mean, obviously, this is beyond our expertise. My expertise, it's more of psychiatry and psychology and all that. But I would think that while racism, yes, it's something that you learn, whether it's from friends, from school, from home, from all of those environmental factors. I think that lack of empathy, though, that's internal.
Was there? I know it's not your expertise, as you said, but if you look at all the cases you've prosecuted, or even the ones you defended, what would be the one common denominator?
Are we talking killing cases or are we talking in general? Because
Let's focus on killing first.
look, most of the cases that I've had, in fact, all of the cases that I've had involving murders and attempt murders, all the homicides that I've handled, whether it's, first degree, second degree, or any other degree, all of those have been a result of something personal. Every one of them, whether it's a fight over drugs, you could make that personal, right? It could lead into that. Whether it was someone hurt someone's brother, sister, mom, or it was a bar fight that turned deadly. Everything went from some sort of a human factor into something extra. I think I've only had one case as a prosecutor that I thought the guy was out of whack, now that I remember, actually. And that one was an attempt murder, and it was a guy who just didn't like his uncle and told his mom, if my uncle ever comes into this house, I'm going to kill him. And there's no reason behind it. There was absolutely no reason behind it. And before that, that guy had a couple of other attempt murder arrests that ended up in assault with a deadly weapon convictions. So he had a pretty big jacket of crimes. And his uncle walked in. He went, picked up a knife, came, stabbed him, and walked out. Just heartless, just like that. I think that was the only case I've had like that. And he never cared.
There's something has to be off. Something traumatic must have happened in that child's lifetime for them to turn out the way they turned out.
And I never knew because he didn't have some sort of an insanity defense or any kind of heat of passion defense in that case. I was a prosecutor in that case. And in that case, the defense didn't put on, or really the circumstances just didn't warrant any kind of a mental health defense. So I never knew.
There was never abuse from the uncle to the nephew ever? No. Really?
Never brought up. I mean, I think that would be something that the defense would, make this big thing, right? Like the Menendez Brothers.
I'm curious. Is being a psychopath or a sociopath genetic? I don't think it is, man.
Well, I don't know if it's genetic, but if there's a chemical imbalance is not necessarily.
Okay, how do you get chemically imbalanced with that? What is it?
Well, I mean, I can only speak to, for example, we see postpartum, right, depression stuff with women who you've heard on the news that take the lives of their own children on themselves at times. That's a chemical imbalance. That's a real thing.
Correct, but that's a hormonal imbalance that happens to majority of women after they give birth.
Not majority, but yeah, a lot. But then some turn into the severity, right? So I don't know this, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, severity might be the one that you're talking about, but I believe so, and I believe Irene, we even spoke about it, one of our previous guests, where every woman goes through postpartum. It just depends on how severe it is. That is.
And so, but with the same way, if women can have that postpartum, who's to say that people in general don't have fluctuations in their hormonal levels or any other trigger in their brain that isn't working the right way?
Correct. But in order to treat severe postpartum, where a woman is going through depression, we've spoken about this multiple times, where if a husband is there, family members are there to support, to help, to talk about it, it's an easier transition back to getting the hormones back into order and getting out of that depression.
It just came to me actually. Substance abuse is another one.
Oh, that's a difference. Yeah.
So, but
See,
substance
yes.
abuse can cause that in a lot of people
When a-
who do commit crimes like that
When a
too.
pregnant mom is abusing, or
No, I'm
No,
talking
just in
about
general.
just in
Ah.
general.
because look at it this way. Let's say if there's 2 kids in the household, right? The younger kid is born. For example, they're 2-3 years apart, and now the older one is not getting as much attention. You don't think that could provoke some type of chemical imbalance, maybe that then can turn into something more serious as they grow older?
I think it'll cause emotional damage,
Yeah.
chemical imbalance. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't
It'll
think
cause
so.
jealousy. It might cause animosity between the siblings as they grow older. That's why we always say,
So
when you have,
what's your definition of a chemical imbalance?
that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I think chemical imbalance has to be something traumatic.
So-
it has to be something traumatic, whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, constant physical abuse, like a spanking on the butt every now and then for misbehaving is not going to cause chemical imbalance. But I think constant abuse will trigger something.
You don't think for, let's say, a 5-year-old who's not getting the attention because now they have a 2-year-old sibling, that's not constant? Because a chemical imbalance, from my understanding, is not necessarily some type of chemical that's been administered into your body that has caused an imbalance. That's not what chemical imbalance means.
Obviously.
Chemical imbalance means there's something going on within your neurotransmitters, right? Where it's not, the signal waves are off. That's a chemical imbalance. Now, what caused that neurotransmitters, that signals to go off?
I think it's more than just attention, because I agree. You can have animosity, you can have
Jealousy.
jealousy, and you can act out in a bad way, but it doesn't mean that you're acting out because you're chemically imbalanced. I think there's just medically different things. I think we're way, like, I wouldn't even be able to give you an opinion on that. It's so outside of my area.
Sure.
I see, because like kids will throw tantrums where they'll try to get your attention no matter what. I mean, my son throws tantrums every now and then if I'm spending too much time with my daughter.
Again, this is not anything any of us can relate to.
No.
I'm
I mean,
not
this
speaking
is
from experience. What I'm speaking from is there's a reason why there are kids at 4 years old, 5 years old dealing with depression. Why? Because their mortgage payment is due? Because their gas bill went up? No. It has to. So something has to be causing that. And now you could, yeah, of course, there's a lot of mislabeling and overdiagnosing, as again we discussed with Dr. Irene a couple of weeks ago. But kids process and interpret their experiences differently than we do as adults. And I think that has a lot to do with whether they become abusive teenagers, whether they become bullies, because to them, that's abuse from their parent, that they are no longer getting what they're accustomed to getting. And the way they interpret it, I think, could lead to many different, that's, to me, trauma for them. To us, it's not trauma. To us, it's like, well, get over it. You were the first one, you were the special one. Now the second one gets a little more attention. Get over it.
Yeah, but I think there's an approach to situations like that. I mean, if you're a parent and that's how you're treating your firstborn, there's I think there's something wrong with you, because you need to.
See, now there's something wrong with me. I'm
not saying you did that to your kids. Obviously, this is more. Look, we talk about parenting all the time. We're all dads. We're parents. You're a mom, but giving your child attention is a normal thing, and you need to be able to balance both kids, whether they have a short age gap or a large age gap. Like, my kids are 4 years apart. Your kids are 2 years apart.
18 months, yeah.
So, and then Joe, how much were your kids? How,
2 years apart.
2 years apart. So, there's always that difference. And then, as they say, that as a child gets older and there's a larger age gap, there's a cusp to it as well, because they're capped to it as well. Because let's say, for example, it's a 4, 5, 6-year-old, there might be a little bit more jealousy. Whereas if it's maybe a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and then that age gap, there might be relief for that child, as in like, oh, you know what? I finally have a sibling. They understand what it's like to be a brother or sister, or that's what they've been waiting for. Would you agree?
10 years is a magic number. I mean, yeah, my experience is the opposite, right? My two kids are very far apart, and they they miss each other when one is at home, and they never fight. I don't have that issue, but it's an 11-year difference.
And you had a boy first, and then you have a
Yeah.
And how did your son feel when your daughter came into this world?
Well, my son wanted a sibling for a really long time, but I was not ready. And so by the time that I was, and I had my daughter, he didn't even care anymore. He was just like, what am I going to do with the baby now? Like, I'm too old for this now. So when I had my daughter, it was perfect because it wasn't like a little brother that he had to play with or anything. And so he was more like a big brother protector, still is.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's kind of like the second dad in the picture, like there's a lot of things that are going on in that, in their age group, right? That my son is going to be more aware of than my husband and I. And so we defer to our son for a lot of things, which is great. And my daughter, now that my son might move away, for grad school or whatever, my daughter cries all the time, like, oh, I don't want to see David go. I don't want to see David go. So it's a completely different dynamic.
It's a different bond.
Yeah.
But my sister's 12 years younger than me, even though my brother's only 2.5 years younger than me, right? So when my sister was born, I was 12 years old. I traveled to Armenia by myself with our group when she was only 5 months old. So it was obviously, like you said, it was a different relationship at first because she was my baby sister. Okay, what am I supposed to do? And
that's what I was mentioning.
And when she became 4 or 5, at that point I'm already a teenager. Most of my time is spent in school or with my friends, right? But then as we became adults, now she has 3 boys. She has more kids than I do. God bless her kids, my nephews. But now we have a different relationship because we're both adults, we're both parents, so the bond is different now. But a 12-year gap, especially between a boy and a girl, it's a big gap. So growing up, yeah, both my brother and I were very protective of her, but the relationship my brother and I had was different because we had mutual friends. I couldn't be friends with her 9-year-old friends as a grown ass man.
Correct. Yeah.
So it was different growing up, but
see, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like, see, you had a brother, so you had somebody to bond with. Like, imagine your brother wasn't in the picture.
I would bond with you, but then you were very young too at that. So I don't know if that would work.
Again, for those of you watching who have siblings where there's a large age gap, I'm curious as well. If you guys are commenting in the comments, whether you're watching live on Twitter or you're watching live on YouTube, I want you guys to comment. How much of an age gap do you have between your siblings, if you guys have any, and what type of relationship did you have with them? Because I'm genuinely curious about it.
But since we were discussing, obviously, potential abuse and all that, we had several people
What do we got?
asking your opinion on
What do we got, Joe?
one of the most famous cases going on right now, which is the Menendez brothers.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Yes, we do have questions. Until I find it, go ahead.
What are your thoughts, Mariya, as far as, because you've probably deep dived into, I think, as a former prosecutor and a current DA, not DA, current defense attorney. Well, I guess DA, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid when the case was all over the TV. So, having my experience when watching it now, I was so curious as to what really happened back then that I didn't understand as a kid. So I really dived into it. And I don't share the popular opinion, which is that they should be freed. I think that they were convicted for a reason. And I think that it was life without the possibility of parole for a reason. And I don't think whether they were sexually abused when they were little or not, it could have happened. I don't know. I don't think it matters.
assuming everything that they showed on Netflix
Well,
was true.
Okay, but here's the thing. You can't assume that because Netflix is showing both possibilities. So what are you assuming to be true? I assume, for sake of argument, that it's true that they were actually abused when they were children. Okay, let's take that assumption. I don't believe that they were abused when they were adults. I really don't believe that. I don't believe it based on the witness statements. I don't believe it based on their conduct during the trial and how they were trying to get all these people to say what they wanted them to say. And also from a lot of people that watched the way that they were talking to their parents when they were adults. And in order for them to have any kind of mitigation here, any kind of defense and mitigation, they would have had to show that that abuse was ongoing at an older age at the time of the murders, and that they were actively afraid of their parents. Because remember the very first trial that they had, where they got a hung jury, they went with a heat of passion defense, saying that they thought that the parents were going to shoot them. And
Right.
so they prepared. And because they, at least one of the brothers was continuously being abused and the other brother was being overprotective, their minds weren't thinking clearly, and so they really thought that they were going to get killed, and so they resorted to buying guns to protect themselves, and then this happened. And in order for you to believe that, you would have to believe that they were in fact abused as adults, and that they were in fact, at least imperfectly, it was called the imperfect self-defense theory, thought that their parents were going to kill them, only to come to find out that their parents were actually asleep at the time that they were shot. And if that was the case, why brutally shoot them in the kneecaps and make it look like a mafia hit? It would have been a little bit different. So I'm looking at it as a legal analyst, as a former prosecutor, as a defense attorney. And I just don't buy any of it. I think there's a reason why it was all rejected.
So, and how could the scenario have been different where you would buy into it?
I think if there was no evidence of them trying to get witnesses to lie for them, I think if their conversations with their psychologists included some things that were happening to them still. Now, I understand, and people are going to hate me for this, and then there's going to be a lot of backlash because people are saying, well, back then there was no understanding of sexual abuse and they didn't feel comfortable talking about it, which is why they never even came out to their psychologist, right? That's one of the arguments. Look, I was a sex crimes prosecutor for years. I have handled so many sex crimes cases with children involved. None of them grow up and killed their parents and are afraid that they're going to get killed. It's just different. And just looking at the way that kids grow up when they're abused, they'll move away. They'll hate their parents. They'll do other things. But this was so financially motivated at that point. Yeah, sure, maybe they hated them because they were abused as kids. But that hate coupled with that financial motivation, I think, was the real factor, the real motivation behind the murder.
So how long did it take for them to come to a realization that, oh, you know what? I'm going to kill my mom and dad for what they did to me. I don't know, what was it, like 15, 20 years ago?
But I mean, okay, let's say it did happen when they were a little bit older. Let's say it's not 15 years ago. Okay, let's say it was more recent.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for them to go plan on buying these weapons, go from store to store to buy it? At what point do you draw a line and say they knew exactly what they were doing and this was planned murder? I mean, if they put in that much effort in just moving out and living on their own instead of killing their parents, come on.
Yeah, but if you've been, let's say, abused away, again, I don't know the true story. All I know is what they've shown on Netflix. But if even half of what they showed was true, if two kids have been abused the way that the dad abused them, let's say up to the age of 15, to be born into that, and I mean, I can't even talk about it as far as like the gruesome things he did to his boys. To me, it's like I can't. Yes, once you're old enough for you to think, you know what, I'm going to kill both my parents because my mom knew about it. She didn't do anything about it. My dad obviously was the one doing it. So I don't need to move out. Well, how am I supposed to move out? What
Well-
I'm going to do is I'm going to get revenge.
But that what you just said is fine, but then you would have to be okay with being convicted of murder.
But I don't think it should be life because now they're in their 50s. You think they're a danger to society?
Look,
They still killed somebody, bro.
Are they a danger to society?
it's not about that though. So let's look at it legally speaking,
Mhm.
okay? Who gets life without the possibility of parole? There's so many murders out there. Who do you hear that gets life without the possibility of parole? Only, I'll tell you the answer.
Premeditated.
Only, well, no, a lot of first degree murders are premeditated. This is more than that. This is called a special circumstance enhancement. Anytime you have a murder in the first degree, it's automatically 25 to life because
Mhm.
first degree means it's premeditated and deliberated. Okay. All it means is that you had time to think clearly, knew right from wrong, and you decided to act anyway. That's literally premeditated and deliberated. The special circumstance that these guys had was lying in wait. Okay, you can have many different special circumstances. It could be torture, it could be other things. This one specifically was lying in wait. What does that mean? That means this was more than just a momentary or even a couple of hours of knowing what you're doing and deciding to do it. They planned this thing for days, for months. I don't know how long, I don't remember, but they went from store to store to buy a weapon. They hid their guns in the car. They waited until the perfect moment to come out and pick up their car, the guns, and then they walked in at the perfect moment to have that clear shot. All of that was lying in wait. It's that extra factor that enhances and makes a regular first degree murder go to the type of murder that qualifies as life without the
So
possibility
it
of parole.
changes the motive,
So
basically.
that's how people get to the death penalty. So how does this work? Usually you'll go to the guilt phase. Once they're found guilty on first degree murder, the second phase, the same jury now gets to decide life without the possibility of parole. We call it life or death. Life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. That's when now, because before that, certain things can't come in. Like there, a lot of character stuff, mitigation stuff. People come out, speaking on behalf of them. Now at that phase, at the sentencing phase, they get to do that. They get to hear all about how these kids grew up, what could have caused this. And so feeling sorry for them is what causes them to go from, okay, no to death. We'll give them life without the possibility of parole. And that's what they did with them. So legally speaking, they got it. They got what the law,
So if, let's say, they were 15 and while being abused by their father, they killed the father, that would have been okay.
I mean, I think it drastically changes the situation.
Because what also changed the situation is the dad was a very powerful man. He was going to also run for Senate, or he was running for Senate, right? Or planning. I don't remember exactly, but very well connected, which means to have a father like that, if you go to the police or you go to anybody, the likelihood of them believing you over your powerful dad is slim to none. And the connections he had, the judges and everybody else he had in his pocket for whatever type of business he was in, the likeliness of the father being convicted, I think from their perspective was zero chance. So they took matters into their own hands. That's how I see it.
And is that okay? Where do you draw the line for other people? Like, where do you say, okay, this is what the law says is right or wrong, and what makes it okay, and what doesn't? Like, where do you stop?
When it comes to parent and child, to me, the legal system is kind of very
Black and white.
No, it's not, because it's I wish it was, but I don't think it is. It's as clear as mud. I think that's the issue, because so many parents get away with doing this. I mean, look at it this way: and here's the thing, we've got, according to FBI records, we have close to 400,000 children missing. Nobody gives a flying about these kids. So I don't think anybody cares about what's going on with these children or any child as far as them being abused at home or whatnot. So that's where me as a parent and as a child of my parents. Like, I just can't see how you're gonna be, okay, I'm just gonna go to the attorneys and we're gonna have a discussion, and hopefully the law's on my side. Because if God forbid the law's not on my side, now I gotta go back home to my father again, who's gonna pound me even more. I
Look,
mean, you got to look at it from that perspective, not just, well, they took. Of course, I don't think anybody should take anybody's life, but if as a father you're that immoral, you're that type of a son of a bitch where you can do those things to your child, you need to be publicly tortured and killed, I think.
Okay, but what about the mom?
Look, the mom, I guess, just like if him and I were sitting in the car, I drove him or he drove me somewhere and I killed somebody, he's an accessory, right? She's an accessory for however many years, 15, 17, 20 years. She knew about it and didn't do jack.
Well, I think that's where my thoughts are different from yours, because I think that just shows where their mind was. Because I think it's one thing to want to kill your dad for something that he's still doing to you. It's another where because you can't you can't disregard what they said. And they said, we liberated our mom. You know, she was miserable. We liberated her. And that's not the same as she did this too. She was just as guilty as him. They came up with that later. So they go back and forth on this. And I don't believe a word that came out of their mouths, quite frankly,
See,
because of all of that.
that's the thing. I'm not speaking of whether, again, the story is the story. I don't know whether it's true or not. I'm just going based off of what was presented on Netflix. But what threw me off was then they go on a shopping spree after they've killed their parent. That, again, yeah, normal person wouldn't do that, but they're not normal people. Obviously, they're not normal 20-year-olds or 15-year-olds, because there's no freaking way you could grow up in a household like that. I don't care who you are and be normal. There's absolutely zero chance. These kids, if they were molested from the age that they were, they had zero chance of surviving in life.
talk about chemical imbalance.
Hmm?
Talk about chemical imbalance. That's where this
We
that's
circle
where-
back.
Yeah, it comes back to that. Look, the the judicial system is built in a way where, yeah, there are certain loopholes here and there, but in my opinion, they killed somebody. So you killed somebody, you're gonna serve a certain sentence, whether it's life without parole or 25 years and possible parole, whatever it is. I don't know exactly where it stands, but in my opinion, the correct thing would have been to turn the father in, bring in the evidence of whatever it is that he did to you, and then let the father
Really?
get the
So,
death penalty.
Let me ask you this: how many times have we seen articles on Instagram or some other social media or newspaper where it's like, yeah, the father caught the rapist of his daughter and killed the guy, and every single comment, including from you and from me and from every other man, is he should get zero time. Why? Why didn't he just catch him and say, "Hey guys, come take him to court. Let the law, bring justice to him. It's okay that I caught him, doing whatever he was doing to my daughter. It's okay. Let's
No, it's not okay.
Why not? Why would you kill
Well,
that person?
well,
Should you do life in prison for that?
But I think there's a difference now, because we're not talking about if that's okay and you get completely scot free. There's something called heat of passion. That's where that would apply. So people like that wouldn't get convicted of murder. If that's truly what happened, then they would get what's called the heat of passion defense, and that drops it down to voluntary manslaughter,
Which is what?
Which is another type of homicide, but it carries a few years in prison as opposed to a life in prison. And so, if you took a life and you did it because you were enraged at what you saw, then the law gives you that mitigation, is what we call it. So you drop it down from, not even second degree. You're talking about a third degree murder.
That's assuming if you have good
It's not
defense.
even murder. It's homicide. Well, I mean, look, if the
Because if you have a public
that's a
defendant
whole
with
different
diabetic shoes,
that's a whole different argument and area that we could talk about forever. But just in generally speaking, just factually, if that's what happened, the law gives you that. And at the end of the day, when you as a guy, like you say, if somebody did this to my wife, somebody did this to my sister, I go do this. You're ready to go serve the time when you say that, because when you know what you're doing it because you don't care anymore, right? So at some point you got to say, well, I did it. I know what I did, and I'll pay for what I did. But again, the law gives you some areas where nothing is black and white like that. You're not going to get convicted of murder if, the classic example, they teach us this in law school. I don't love this example, but, a man walks in and his wife is in bed with someone else. And he sees that right there, right in front of his eyes, loses control, picks up a gun, shoots. That's the classic heat of passion example, because in that moment, he didn't even have time to think. He reacted. So same can be said about the father who just found out that his daughter was, molested. He lost it, picked up a gun, went and did something. How long that takes?
One is consensual. One is completely different.
Abuse.
One is a child being abused. One is your wife.
Right.
Committing infidelity.
But it's the same concept legally speaking, is that you're kind of you lose control of that situation, and that's what heat of passion is referring to. In what in what situations does it apply is purely factual. So a jury can find a situation not good enough, and a jury can find the situation perfect for that scenario. That's where you could argue that some cases are unjustly decided on.
Joe, do we have any comments or questions regarding Menendez before we?
The main question was what she answered, if she feels that they were guilty or innocent.
I mean, they're guilty, bro. At the end of the day, they killed somebody. It's as simple as that. It's just, I don't know.
Stop saying at the end of the day they killed somebody.
Well, they did.
They did. I mean, it's even his defense team now is not contesting the fact that they're guilty or innocent. This is just purely a resentencing issue.
No, because again, when you say that, if God forbid you were in a situation where you had to do what I just talked about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, and I'd be in orange jumpsuit.
Yeah, and you would want people to say, well, at the end of the day, he killed somebody.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I killed somebody, but I'd be in an orange jumpsuit.
But you want that to be the label for you. At the end of the day, he killed somebody. Doesn't matter what he killed them for.
That's not the label that I'm going with.
Doesn't matter what he killed them for.
No. Labeling.
At the end of the day, he killed somebody.
Labeling is one thing, but
because you're narrowing it down to at the end of the day, he killed somebody. End of story. Would you want that?
No, of course not.
Then why don't say that?
Well, we're looking at it as on a legal standpoint. That's what happened.
But
in my opinion, the right thing to do was find the parents guilty, and then literally watch them murder. The legal system,
of course,
do whatever they need to do to them.
Let me put it in perspective. Even Gascon knew that they were guilty of murder. It was just a resentencing issue for him.
Look, I'm not saying they're not guilty of murder.
Gascon said they're legal of.
Well, I mean, he had to.
You know what? I changed my perspective on this entire story now.
Did Gascon know that? Also say that OJ was guilty of murder?
Oh, I don't know what he said about that.
OJ is a free man, or was a free man. You see why? Because he had Shapiro, and he had Cochran and Kardashian.
Johnny Cochran.
What if Menendez at one point did interview Shapiro, right? And then they fired him and hired this other lady. I forget her name. What if Shapiro was their defense attorney? Would it be a different story?
Well, do you think Shapiro got OJ off, or was it Johnny Cochran?
It was Johnny Cochran.
They were together. I don't know
if
who had
the gloves don't fit, you must acquit. Come on, man.
Yeah,
Johnny Cochran was probably one of the most skilled defense attorneys I've ever seen.
So,
it wasn't just Johnny Cochran was amazing, but
he played the race card as well,
absolutely.
bro. I mean, he did a phenomenal job.
Johnny Cochran was amazing, but it was also the environment of the time.
It was right at the same time. Yes, when the boys were in prison.
I think it was right after, no?
Right after
OJ.
Yeah, OJ came in, and they were actually, again, assuming the story is true, they were OJ was in the next jail cell of one of the brothers.
Yeah. At
Yeah,
the end,
it was the second high profile case within like I think a 2-year span, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't.
yeah, they did touch upon it. Like it was such a politically heated time that they needed to convict these.
So let me ask you
white
this then:
kids.
do you think the criminal justice system is fair?
No, because it depends on how much money you can afford to hire the best attorney. That's what it comes down to.
What do you think?
Oof. It's hard to answer.
Because it's right. There's a reason why you charge what you charge. There's defense attorneys who I'm sure charge $350 an hour. There's ones who charge $1,500 an hour. It's not because they have a bigger mortgage.
Look, you're right. It's true. If you have the better attorney, your chances are better. But look, if you compare our system, our justice system, to the justice system of any other country, again, I don't want to speak on something I don't know, so I'm not going to say every single other country, but a lot of other countries, we are probably as close to good as we can be.
I think we're good, but
you're always going to have that, because at the end of the day, you have to understand that if a case is taken to trial, if a case goes to trial, 12 people from our community are making that call. And all those 12 people come in with their own biases, with their own experiences, their own histories. And no matter how much we as attorneys try to get the most unbiased jury, which I will tell you right off the bat, as a defense attorney, I'm not trying to get an unbiased jury. I'm trying to get a jury who's going to vote not guilty, right? So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to skill. Does the attorney know what they're doing? Do they have enough experience in trial that they know how to pick a jury? Can they smell the jury when they're talking to them and know that this is a jury that's going to understand the issues that they're going to be raising? Or can I confuse this jury? Or is this jury going to be a follower and do what the other juror says if I pick them both? The other juror has chemistry with the other jury, so they'll come on to the same decision. So all of that is a set of skills that an attorney has to have based on experience. And if you have more money, you're going to be able to afford that type of an attorney, and your chances are better. That's always going to be there.
I always say, look at the way your attorney dresses. If your attorney's attorney's suit is baggier than your jumpsuit, you're going to jail for a very, very long time.
Medi-Cal paid for their shoes, for their diabetic shoes.
Yes, if your attorney's wearing Crocs, good luck. That's all I'm going to tell you. But do you want to say something before I ask her another question? Because I wanted to ask her about.
Joe, do we have anything else?
A lot of people are asking about the Hunter Biden situation, and
who's that?
There was Levick, I'm sure, that was asking that.
But before we go to Hunter Biden,
and also the bear, the bear.
The insurance fraud.
Well, I had a really good punchline for that one.
Oh, did you?
Because you guys touched on Johnny Cochran, so I got to say, if I was the defense attorney, I'd be like, if the claw don't fit, you must.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I wonder how he's going to claw himself out of that one. It's a very unbearable situation.
Somebody's really been.
That was such a dad joke.
It was a dad joke. But let me ask you about plea deals. So do you think plea deals at this point are more, it's more justice, or is it more convenient?
Oh man, I hate that. I battle with that daily. And look, here's the thing. I have clients where I tell them, don't take this deal, let's go to trial. But then they tell me, well, I can't afford to go to trial. And then I'm at a dilemma, like, how do I work for free? I can't, because I have mouths to feed, right? I have a family. I have to work for my money. I can't do pro bono. Like, okay, if I took on one client's case and I did it for free, and then where do I draw the line, right? So,
is a plea deal pro bono?
No. But let's say no, but
right?
you get paid up to a certain time, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you're in jury trial, you have to understand trials can take weeks to months, okay? And you're not working just from 8:30 to 4:30 when court opens and ends. You're working 24/7. You sleep maybe a couple hours that night, but even in your sleep, you might wake up with a thought and write it down because you're nonstop. You're in motion. So you get to court, earlier before everybody. You have to be prepared. All your stuff has to be set up. You got to know exactly how you start. Then the next day, session is over. You go home. You're preparing for the next witness and the next witness, and so you're working nonstop for a month. You're not taking in new clients. You can't. You're not physically there to talk to clients. You're not appearing on your other cases. You're paying other attorneys to make your appearances for you, and your clients are already pissed off because you're not going to court for them, and they paid you for your time. So a trial is expensive. So somebody has to pay me a lot more money for me to do the trial, as opposed to me trying to get a settlement for them. But there are situations where I get a settlement and the client wants to take the deal, even though I don't think they should, because I think if I were to go to trial, I'd win. And it sucks,
But if it does come down to a matter of finances, I mean, how do we expect so many people to be able to afford to pay an attorney for a full-on trial?
And that's, I mean, obviously that's not all the cases. That happens very rarely that happens, where I disagree with the client and I think he should go to trial, but it sucks. And that's part of this justice system. When you say, is it fair? Do we take plea deals? And is that a good thing? Some people should take plea deals because if they go to trial, they're going to get much more severe punishment. But some people shouldn't take the plea deal because the DA got it wrong, but they don't see they're wrong and they just push. And you want to tell your client not to take this deal, but they're stuck.
So is it convenient for them to take the plea deal?
Yeah, sometimes they take it because they don't want to risk. And sometimes it's not even financial. Financial is very rare. A lot of times it's the fear that, what if I lose? What if I lose? And they tell me, Mariya, this isn't your life. Like, I trust you. You'll probably do a really good job, but what if? And I can't tell him the what if. And that's why it's like, well, it's your decision.
So, speaking of that, how do you think race and socioeconomic status influences as far as the outcome of a case? If they can't, see, that's why we have a justice system here, but I think at the end of the day, it still boils down to, what can you afford to be a free man or not?
Yeah, that's always going to be there. That's been there forever, and I don't think that's going to change.
So in that case, why can't public defenders be paid more and have less cases so they could spend the time and actually...
You are going to get sponsorship from every public defender. Look, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I have worked with some of the most amazing, dedicated public defenders. Some of them are so smart and so good. And some of them would do even better if they had resources that they just don't have. They don't have the luxury of time, preparation, and they don't have the luxury of paying for the things that private attorneys can pay for. For example, I have a client, I need an expert to testify to something for my client. If my client can afford that expert, we get him that expert. Public defender is going to get funds, but they're only going to be limited on the kinds of experts that they can pay for. They're going to be cheaper. Right. So it sucks. But the same goes for the prosecutors too. Part of the reason why I decided to switch over too, one of the factors was financial. I mean, you work for the government, and the government just does not appreciate you.
Are you sure the government doesn't appreciate you?
They do not appreciate
me.
I thought the government loves everybody.
Yeah, I get a bonus check every April.
Well, they appreciate Hunter Biden. Speaking of Hunter Biden, Joe, what was
before we get there, there's another question as well, because they're thinking I'm picking and choosing, especially Hector. Here's the question.
You are biased.
Crimea River.
Ask her if she thinks the Rittenhouse case was correct decision, and ask her the Penny case. Yes.
As in, hold on, the Rittenhouse decision, as in him being not guilty?
Yes. What do you think of that?
Wait, remind me, Rittenhouse, was this the junkyard?
Kyle Rittenhouse was during the riots that took place where he...
Oh, yeah. Of course, I know. Yeah. I'm trying to remember that case. Wasn't there a video of the guy coming at him with a gun?
Yes. Yeah. And he basically defended himself.
Yeah. No, I think it's very just based on the factual scenario.
At the end of the day, I think he's still a killer.
They were trying to kill the kid.
I see what he did.
I know. Yeah, he has those tendencies.
Don't make me use your new
Trust me, I've been dealing with him for 6 years.
Don't make me use your new nickname, bro. Oh, right when I said that, look who texted me.
That nickname was given to me by a very special individual.
Oh my God.
Which you guys will hear about later. But tell him thank you.
Who was Penny? I don't remember the Penny. What was that one?
Which one was the Penny one?
I'm unsure of that. Maybe if they were to post more specifics.
Yeah, let us know about the Penny one. But Rittenhouse, everybody knows about Kyle Rittenhouse. And
he was not guilty. In fact, we had a state bar event, the Beverly Hills Bar Association, and his attorneys showed up, and we did a Q&A where we asked them a lot of questions. And yeah, that case was just filed because of the political climate at the time. It should not have been filed. It was just so clear that it was a self-defense issue.
Well, going back to what we were going to bring up, Hunter Biden. So the current president of the United States, the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden, has a son who was found basically guilty of multiple counts of felonies, and from drugs. And, well, the laptop was found as well, which had a ton of evidence in there as well. And Joe Biden, prior to yesterday, said that if his son is found guilty, he will not pardon him.
Oops.
Yeah. I mean, Joe. I mean, I don't know if it's your diaper we're smelling. Not you, Joe, but Mr. President Biden. I don't know if it's your diaper we're smelling or the bullshit that spewed out of your mouth on Twitter and on all social media pages. But Hunter Biden was pardoned by the current sitting president, Joe Biden. And I think we have a clip, right, Joe?
Yeah, we got.
President Biden has pardoned his son Hunter, despite previously saying he would not interfere with the Justice Department's decisions. Hunter Biden was convicted earlier this year of illegally buying a gun and lying about his drug use, as well as tax evasion. The president described the prosecution as unfair and a result of pressure from his political opponents. Hunter Biden said mistakes he made in his darkest days of addiction had been exploited to humiliate his family. Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and a miscarriage of justice.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, technically, he's not interfering. He's using his presidential power, but I do
to interfere, right?
But yeah, I mean, none of us saw that coming, right?
I mean,
but I'm glad he is using his power to interfere.
As a dad?
No, as a president. Because now Trump can use the same power to
pardon himself,
interfere, to interfere in the J6, soap opera.
Oh, geez! Look what you did, Joe. Look what you did.
You're forcing me to release everybody from J6.
Dirty guy, very nasty guy. But it's. People were online saying, "Oh, father's unconditional love for his son." Oh my goodness! Wow, bro, give me a break.
What would you have done if you were Biden? If you were Joe Biden,
you messed up. You pay for it.
So at the end of the day,
look, man, we've talked about this a lot. Where we mentioned celebrity children being spoiled to the max and end up getting into drug abuse and all this bullshit with law enforcement and the judicial system. This is the same thing. At the end of the day, it's a celebrity.
Here's what I don't like about it. How many people did he pardon? I think I saw something like 26.
Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Is there a limit to how many they can pardon?
No, I don't know the answer to that, but I thought I saw somewhere where it said there was a list and it was 26 people. Am I wrong? I think there was. Let's check that. Well,
I'm asking
while you guys are asking, here's the thing. So few presidential pardons are actually granted to people who deserve them that the familial relationship coming into play and taking that spot, to me, it's grave injustice.
And that's the thing with powerful men and women. It's they have certain advantages that most average people would never comprehend.
I mean, it doesn't mention anything about limits to how many people that can be pardoned. It all depends on state legislature as well.
No, but I thought I saw
goes from
somewhere.
State to state.
I thought I saw a post that said there was a list of 26 people that he had pardoned.
So
maybe I'm wrong.
As far as Joe Biden is concerned?
Yeah, like today's post.
So, I mean, we can add how many people has Joe Biden pardoned?
Mm-hmm.
I know that his brother was one of them. He pardoned his brother.
What did the brother do?
I don't know in detail, but I heard.
he didn't pay for the car wash.
Yeah,
Air
it says
freshener.
26. So if you look at the summary of how many people presidents have pardoned, it says here George W. Bush 200, Barack Obama 1927. That's 1,927. But like that's during the entire presidency, right? Joe Biden 26 so
Hold
far.
on. What does it mean when they say commuted the sentences? What does that mean?
Say that again.
It says Biden has commuted the sentences of 75 people.
Commuted.
Yes.
I'm guessing just
Pardoned?
yeah, I'm guessing that
75
was
people.
enough.
I
That's
guess
not
so.
allowed.
No, I mean, for somebody who's practically half coherent, it's pretty much a lot.
It's reduced punishment for a crime, yeah. So
75.
say for example, somebody got 20 years in prison, he can drop it down to 10 or whatever.
See, let me ask you this question: do you think he would have pardoned his son if Kamala Harris had won presidency?
Yeah.
You still think he would have done it, or he would have left it in Kamala's hands?
I think that's a good point. I guess if he had Kamala's promise that she would, maybe. But here's the thing: I think there's an integrity factor here because he had represented that he wouldn't. So I think the whole party looks bad because of what he did, and it's just bad to me that he did that.
I think
now.
it's just cherry on top of everything else they've done to look bad. They haven't done anything to look good.
And I feel like
years.
he did it for his son, whether he would have done it or Kamala would have done it. I think the end result would have been the same, right? We would have had the same conversation during Kamala and say, wow, she pardoned. Of course, she pardoned Biden's son.
So what happens if he pardons Hunter Biden, and 2 years later he commits a couple more felonies? Is that pardon still in effect? Or?
No, not really.
Well, look at it this way. Hunter Biden pled guilty on September 2024 to 9 federal tax charges, including 3 felonies and 6 misdemeanors. These charges were related to his failure to pay over $1.4 million in taxes from 2016 to 2019. So basically, during the Trump administration,
Well, none of that. That's like nothing.
Filing false tax returns and improperly claiming business tax deductions is a misdemeanor and a felony. So his plea came without a deal, meaning his sentencing was scheduled for December 16th, which is 18 days from. Oh no, I'm sorry, not 18 days.
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from today. So 15 days, as a result of possibly 17 years in prison.
I think those are not even misdemeanor cases compared to everything else he's done. They just took the lightest, what do you call it? I don't know, the convictions you can think of, and okay, this is the one we're going to prosecute him for.
Well, he's the first person to have
the guy has laundered so much money since his dad was VP and president. I mean,
that's stuff technically off the records.
Oh, it's off the record, yeah.
Yeah, because technically, how are you gonna prove it?
There's plenty of evidence for that.
Well, the laptop was destroyed. Only a couple of pictures were leaked. But I mean, he's also one of the first children to bring in cocaine into the White House as well, or crack at this point, because he's more of a crackhead than he is a cokehead. But I mean, he's free now. He could ride off into the sunset with his dad.
He's free to commit more crimes now.
Unfortunate. What are your thoughts on?
I don't know enough to make a thought on things that he's not convicted of. What I can say is that federal offenses are, look, if somebody has a state conviction, they have a couple of options, right? They can expunge these cases, or they can get a governor's pardon. So, they're easier to delete from your record. Federal cases don't have the luxury of expungements. So, watching a president's son get this type of privilege that 99.9% of people who deserve a chance don't get.
Who do you think deserves a chance to?
Those people that were in need that they did that. So say, for example, to me, somebody who is being brought up in a circumstance where they don't need money. Okay. It's purely done from just greed, just additional greed. And then there are people who lived in worse circumstances and they committed this crime. Should they be looked at differently or the same? I don't know the answer to that, right? We could talk about that forever and just debate it. But I feel like he was coming from a place of privilege and did this and is getting pardoned, whereas there's people who don't come from a place of privilege and are not getting a pardon.
So, again, socioeconomics, huh? And who you know.
Who you know for sure on this one.
That's...
Well, he knows one of the most powerful men in the world.
One of, or the most, at least for now.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Till January.
So Daniel Penny is the New York guy. Where in the subway he basically choked out somebody in defense.
The Marine.
Yes.
The former Marine.
Oh, Daniel Penny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know enough about that case, so I'm sorry I can't comment.
I'm surprised people are not just bringing up their own case. So 2 weeks ago, I was driving by. What do you think?
I ran over somebody and killed him. So
guys, this is not the weekend Burjiki.
God rest his soul.
It's the WiseNuts.
I remember that growing up too.
You see, if this happened, what do you think I should do?
So, what's one of your biggest wins as a DA, as a defense attorney?
Was a DA or a defense attorney?
Or I'm sorry. See, you confused me with a DA, man. As not a district attorney, as a defense attorney.
The biggest wins are always the trials. So I've done, like I said, attempt murder trials. I've done sexual crime trials. Then I've won. Knock on wood, I've won the trials that I've done. But also, I would count as wins cases that we settle when we work up the case and show the DA that they're wrong, and then they either reduce the charges quite substantially or completely dismiss. I mean, those are wins too. You can't look at them with I guess less favor than the trials. Trials are when we fail negotiations and then we have to go to trial because it's the only way to get off.
So if the DA's office basically drops all charges, you consider it a win, basically.
Of course, because then obviously they don't just drop charges for no reason. You do the workup, you show them that they got it wrong. And sometimes you prepare witness statement after witness statement, expert, written reports. Sometimes you hire an investigator to go out and gather surveillance or videos or other things to show them that they don't have everything and that they got it wrong.
So how far is reality of being a criminal defense attorney versus like when you watch Suits or when you watch Lincoln Lawyer?
So Suits is like super far from reality. It's like that guy that does everything in every legal element and he's a pro at everything, right? That's definitely not real world at all. And the factual circumstances and scenarios that arise in that show are not realistic at all. But Lincoln Lawyer actually comes the closest to the realities of court, which is why I like watching the show. Obviously, in the show, there are factual scenarios that are very, fantastical. But I think for the most part, what you see happening in court, how they're arguing and how they're doing things and how they talk to their clients, those are pretty on point.
Do you think he's guilty?
Who?
Elliot.
Elliot. Wait, hold on. I'm on the latest season, so I don't know if I remember.
Season 1. The
I
game,
don't even remember
the video game
anymore.
creator.
Honestly, I'm on the last. I just finished watching the last season, so I can't remember.
Because that's the one actually you brought up an example earlier, is where his wife was cheating on him with her yoga instructor.
Okay.
And they were murdered at their house, and then he was the one that's being he was the suspect, number one suspect for it.
I don't remember how that ended. I really don't.
No, don't tell me how it ends. I'm curious because I haven't seen the end yet.
Oh, you want me to give you an opinion?
I want your professional opinion.
Wife was cheating on him with the yoga instructor. She was doing 14 hours of yoga a day.
Instructors they're getting out of hand.
Listen, if your wife is doing 14 hours of yoga or 14 hours of karate, there's a problem.
I will tell you though, Lincoln Lawyer. I can't remember if this was in the first season or it progresses more in the second and third seasons, but the investigator, the investigator that the Lincoln lawyer is working with, I mean, that is every attorney's dream. That's a little fantastic.
The private investigator,
Yes.
the guy with the bike.
Yes. I mean, there are great investigators. Like I work with amazing investigators that can make some magic happen. But having somebody right there in your office that you just tell them what to do and they just bring it and they have all these connections. I mean, come on.
Plus, he's marrying
You
your
know.
ex-wife. That's even better.
Is this connected to the movie Lincoln Lawyer, the one with Matthew McConaughey?
No.
Or has nothing to do with it?
No.
That was about Abraham Lincoln.
No.
The Lincoln Lawyer with Matthew McConaughey
Yeah, I've watched the movie.
It's a movie, and it's about him not being able to drive because his driver's license or something is suspended, and he has a driver who happens to be driving a Lincoln. So,
well, that's why this is called the Lincoln Lawyer, because
that's why I was asking him. Like, is it tied into?
No. He just always drove a Lincoln, and his car was his office, basically, more than his office was.
Interesting. Okay.
That's why he's called the.
Which I swear I'm considering doing.
Your
you?
car being your office?
Well, my car is my office a lot of times, but because of our traffic and parking situations in LA, I'm literally considering getting a driver so that I don't have to look for parking for hours and I can actually do, work review in my car before I get to court.
Where should they send you their resumes?
Right?
What's your email?
I'll put it out when I'm actually looking.
Yeah,
I'll put out a link.
Get a driver now, because once Los Angeles turns into a 15-minute city, we're going to be having to bicycle everywhere we go. And at that point, good luck doing work on a bicycle.
You always going down to downtown?
Oh, I'm everywhere. I take cases in Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, Ventura County, and LA. So I am, like, this morning I was in San Bernardino and then I was in Simi Valley a couple hours later. So I literally go back and forth, and I'm always in my car. Like, I live out of my car. People tell me, like, oh, why do you drive a car that drinks gas? Well, because I need a car that I love, because I literally live out of it.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts on current reform efforts such as, bail reform, sentencing disparities, or alternatives to incarceration?
I mean, these are all the things we just had an election on, because Gascon was the self-proclaimed godfather of sentencing reform, right? He brought in Prop 47, where we had a reduction in sentencing. But now the voters kind of undid a part of what Prop 47 had done. When what I'm referring to is increasing punishment for certain narcotics offenses, increasing punishment and severity of misdemeanor versus felony on certain theft offenses. So the voters have spoken. Look, as a defense attorney, I was comfortable where things were. I liked it because I think whoever was doing horrible things, if they were getting prosecuted, they would have gotten the just punishment. Unfortunately, a lot of people just weren't getting prosecuted or even caught. What I don't like is the recent elections only undid the minor crimes. To me, I mean, other than fentanyl, yes, they increased punishment on fentanyl crimes. But other than fentanyl, I think for the most part, they focused on petty theft crimes and on, possession crimes.
You're referring to Prop 36, right?
Yes. And so, like the problem we have, which you touched on, is residential burglaries, for example. To me, that's worse than murder. Like, honestly, like, I cannot stand a person who goes into the sanctity of another person's home and violates it. I feel like that violates everything in the home. Like, you just don't have the safety. Your home is your castle. That's your kingdom. That's where you're supposed to be safe and protected. And so once that's violated, I feel like your life is violated. You can never feel that safety again with your children and your family. So nothing's been done to increase punishment for those kinds of crimes, even though those crimes are on a crazy rise right now. So I have my thoughts on that. I mean, that question was so packed. You're talking about bail. Bail reform didn't work. We're back to the same place we were at before. They tried to undo bail and do zero bail, and then that didn't work.
What was the logic behind that?
The logic was what the concern you bring up, the socioeconomic background. So if somebody's rich, they can afford the bail and they bail out. The people that can't afford bail, they would get stuck. And so what they did is they said, okay, fine, then we're going to do zero bail for the petty criminals, because then if they don't have money, they just stay in and it's unfair. So they tried to fix the socioeconomic problem, but then that led to more crime.
So basically, I'm going to go rob somebody or rob a store. And if I get caught and I have no money, it's not fair because I was robbing to basically put food on the table.
No, that's not the logic. The
Then
logic
what's
is
the
this.
logic
The
behind it?
logic is this. Say, for example, you commit a robbery,
Okay.
and then he commits a robbery.
Okay.
You got money. You're going to bail out and go home while your case is pending, because you're innocent until proven guilty, right?
Okay.
So you get to be home with your family and eat your warm meals and then have your attorneys fight for your case while you're out and about enjoying your life. He doesn't have money. You know where he's at? In custody. And he might be innocent. You might be guilty, but he gets to stay in custody because he doesn't have money. That was the logic behind trying to get bail reform. But that didn't work. So that they're kind of back to square
No,
one.
you rob somebody, whether you have money or you don't, you're held in custody until your hearing.
But you're assuming they're guilty right away. What if they're innocent?
But then they'll continue to just rob stuff.
But again, you're assuming that they're guilty.
At the end of the day, what they robbed stuff. Huh?
Look, if someone, I'm going to go back to the home defense. If somebody breaks into my house, I'm cherry picking.
What does that mean?
Or the buckshot slug.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
gonna at the end of the day make you what?
It's going to protect my children and my castle.
And make you a killer?
No, it's me
No.
protect. It's me protecting my home.
You're a last samurai warrior because it's you.
Well, hold on. The slug will kill him. The buckshot might detain him. So you know what cherry picking is, right?
Okay, so what you want?
No. Oh yeah, well, it is picking what you want. But basically, what it is when you have a shotgun at home, when you load it, you go buckshot. You put a slug and you put a buckshot.
Okay.
You just split. So if somebody breaks into your house, you don't know if your life is in danger or not, and if they have a gun, you go buckshot. It's going to shoot quite a few bullets in one direction, and then when that person is detained, when you cock your shotgun, now you have a slug in there. Now you can aim. Now, depending on where you want to aim and how dangerous that person is to your family, that's how I look at it. But again, I'm just saying.
Says the man with the jumping to conclusion of at the end of the day.
That's what they did, though. At the end of the day, they killed somebody.
Yeah, and so if that was ever the scenario for you, at the end of the day, that's what you would have done.
No,
right?
I'm not. Look, I'm not saying what they did was.
You're stuck with that label, bro.
Oh, jeez.
You're
I'm not saying it as in like the dad was a saint, bro. He shouldn't have been killed. But at the end of the day, I gotta keep repeating myself.
Yeah, of course, you do, because it only makes sense when you start with that.
I'm with you on this one.
Yeah, I got my attorney here, bro. Just send him the bill. What else we got for her?
AI. Oh, do we have anything, Joe?
Anything from the listeners?
Yes, in regards to whether weed should be decriminalized. That's from Hector.
It kind of is in LA.
Yeah.
In California, it kind of is. I mean, essentially, the only people that get prosecuted now for weed are the growers for illegal growing. Illegal grows in the beginning are misdemeanors. Now, actually, this is a really good question because I could touch upon this. Because a lot of people think, okay, if I grow weed, nothing's happening anymore. Nobody's filing these cases and they're just misdemeanors. I now have several active cases that are felonies. And these are just people who grew weed in either their home or somebody else's home. And what we're seeing is a lot of felony charges because of the chemicals that they're using there. So I have a case where there's diesel leakage from some some cubes that they have there that they're using. And because it went in the soil, it contaminated the earth. And so that's an environmental violation. That's an enhancement. And they made that into a felony. I have extra water usage, that's a felony. There's just so many things that they can now go after to try to enhance it and make it into a felony. And they're doing it. They're actively doing it. So just, people need to watch out.
Yeah. If you're growing in your car or in your garage, watch out, guys.
Yeah. But I do know that right now, federally, because remember, federally, weed is still illegal.
Right.
Federally, I think they're trying to finally decriminalize that, just kind of like at the state
I
level.
don't understand why it was ever illegal. I mean, come on, it's a freaking plant. Well, has anybody committed crime while being high?
DUIs.
More than alcohol, more than
No,
other
it's the
drugs?
same.
Come
No,
on,
no. In
it's,
fact, I think it's a well-known thing that if anything, weed makes somebody a little calmer, so they're less
Yes.
likely to kill.
If anything, the big question is: has anybody ever overdosed from marijuana?
No. So there's just a break, and just to give an opinion, it was actually there's facts that it's actually from paper. They banned marijuana because of paper.
What do you mean they banned marijuana because of paper?
Because hemp is an amazing resource. So you can get paper out of it, you can get clothing out of it, you can get a bunch of stuff out of it with better quality, and it would cost way less to get. So like from trees, for example, you would get paper, right?
So get it out of a marijuana plant
Well,
instead,
yes,
or hemp?
hemp, yeah. So I forget the year.
I
but-
thought we were trying
But
to
then-
save the trees. no?
Yeah.
right.
But then why not make it for both uses? That makes no sense. Because then they would have to have warehouses and make more of
Yeah,
it, right?
It's definitely written that it's because of
I'll tell
paper.
you, in the beginning stages of me being a prosecutor, we used to, because every year we'd do trainings, right? Academy trainings, and we'd have all these DEAs and drug experts come and, teach us and lecture us on how to prosecute narcotic crimes. Weed was always taught to us as being the gateway drug. Like if somebody's doing weed, for sure they're going to go into coke and meth, and that's it. This is how it all begins. And that was the belief before. And I think it took a long time until they figured out that it's not.
How long ago was this?
The last training I was at where we did this,
Is it more than 10 years ago? That's what,
Yeah.
Because marijuana at this point is like Armand says, it's just a plant.
Yeah.
I mean, if you happen to
Bro, go to CVS, try to buy Advil or something that's one of the stronger dosage. You need to provide them with your ID, and there's a limit to how many you can buy within a 1 month period of time. They scan your ID. Essentially, that Advil has so many side effects. It causes so much damage to your liver and organs.
take that Advil with some alcohol, see what kind of effects it'll give you.
But I'm not advocating for you guys to be smoking marijuana, but what I'm saying is it's much safer than Advil or NyQuil or any of the junk that I see so many people drinking on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can't smoke it, there's edibles as well. I mean, again, you got
It definitely sounds like an advertisement.
Yeah.
And if you can't swallow it, there's creams. You can apply the cream. If you can't do that,
well, there's the Death Star. Have you seen Joey Diaz talk about the Death Star?
no, what is
So
that?
it's like basically it's like it's like 500 milligrams of marijuana in like one gummy star, and he gives it to some of his guests that come to the show.
For what?
Just as like oh, do you want to have
Just
some?
the
And Joey
after
Diaz,
party?
no, this is during the
Oh.
podcast, and mind you, Joey Diaz is another podcaster, and his tolerance level is pretty high. And I forgot who it was. There was one guest that was going to go on his show, and he said, "Hey," like his buddy texted him, he says, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going to Joey Diaz's podcast." He goes, "Hey, be careful with the gummies. Be careful with the gummies." Because it's so high. Because when you smoke marijuana, it gives you a different high than when you eat it. Because when you eat it, your liver kind of processes it, and it's something called like one pass or something, where the THC level is so high, it becomes like a psychedelic drug at that point, where you hallucinate and you see stuff.
Hmm.
And the Death Star is one of the things that Joey Diaz talks about, where he takes and he pops some like Skittles, bro. I swear, it's crazy the
Wow.
tolerance level of people.
That's insane. I don't know how they do it.
I don't either. But anything else we got before we call it a night, guys?
No, actually, I was posting Manny's post. It says the cotton industry back in the day is the reason why it's illegal. Hemp was a threat to their business. So yes, it was cotton and paper. If you look it up, you'll see.
Cotton and paper?
Uh-huh. It was the cotton industry. It was the paper industry.
I learned something today.
That's all you learned today?
Damn those cotton pickers. They ruined it for us, huh?
I'm not going to say anything.
Well, no, I was going to ask you about, as I'm sure you're aware, AI is pretty much taking over a lot of different industries. How do you think that's going to impact with as far as like surveillance goes and
You hit it on
body
the
cams
nail.
and
You hit it on the nail. It's so bad. People can enhance videos now with AI, and it's like now we have to get experts to make sure that there is no AI there, and it's becoming so good. You're seeing things that aren't there. You know, I recently had a case. We had to look at the video, and it wasn't the best quality, so I had to get a technician to clear out the quality of the video. And after he clears it out, I mean, I see what I'm looking at, what my focus was. But then on the side, I'm seeing something else. And it was a gun case. It was a shooting case. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's the gun. Someone else has it. It's like, oh, no. That's just like AI stuff that popped in. That wasn't there. But while we're clearing up this, that popped up. It was just the strangest thing. And things were like the computer was doing things, filling in gaps for you that they thought, the computer thought it was needed. So it was the strangest thing, but that's one of the things that popped into my mind. Like, oh my God, people can just manipulate things now.
Well, remember the photo I showed you guys at Mar-a-Lago with me, you, and Tyson Chandler? The video where you can click and remove people from the background now. So the new iPhone iOS has a feature where it's called cleanup. And if there's
iOS has that?
Yeah, bro. And you, for example, if you have something in the background that you want to remove, including a person, you click on it, it scans it, and it removes it.
Well, the best Instagram posters know how to do that for a long time now.
So picture this. Like, imagine having something in your phone where you want to clean it up, and you 2-3 clicks, and all of a sudden, boom, there goes evidence.
I mean, look, with phones, it's a little tricky because law enforcement has the ability to do cell phone dumps where they will get the contents of your phone, even if you delete things. So I think those things are traceable.
Yeah. Those are traceable.
Yeah, you can fool the average person, but when it comes to, the experts that know what's going on, and if they can have access to that kind of data, then they're going to find out.
So watch this. I got a family photo here, right? Let's say, for example, I want to get rid of myself. I click the cleanup button, and then I could zoom in. I could click on myself. It scans it, prepares for cleanup, and then you could basically swivel through, and you could basically remove yourself. Mind you, this is a crappy.
It's amazing for people that go through breakups. It's like, poof, you're gone.
I really like the way I look in that picture, pero he's in there too. So take it out.
Yeah.
There you go.
But you don't think it's also going to have a positive impact as far as, let's say, whether it's for, let's say, speeding or, if AI, there's AI cameras all over town to be able to track and see, okay, where did this individual go? What store? Did they buy anything? Is that the murder weapon?
100%. I mean, but that's the thing with technology, right? It's going to have its setbacks where people are going to be unhappy about certain things, but then it's going to have so much movement. And you just reminded me of a case where, because of technology, we literally solved a case. And so AI helping to do that is amazing. I had a case. If I tell you guys, I mean, this is just. Sorry, I don't know if we have time, but
no, you got time. You got time. No, you got
time. This case that I'm about to talk about should be made into a movie. That's how insane this case was. I was a prosecutor on this one. This little girl, she was probably 19 or 20. found out that her first cousin, another girl, was involved in a sexual relationship with their other cousin. So it was like an incestual relationship. I can't talk. And so she tells her cousin, hey, break up with him. I'm just going to say her and him instead of names. I just feel like I have to protect their privacy still. But she basically says, look, you got to break up with him. She breaks up with him because she's also like, right, this is wrong. We got to be done. The guy then blames this girl for, him losing the love of his life, which is his first cousin. So long story short, I'm just going to cut it down to the facts. He then goes to her house where she lives with their mutual grandmother, waits behind the bush. Let me back up. He goes and he cuts her car brakes so that when she goes somewhere in the morning, she can go and die. He wants to kill her. Then finds out that the cousin that he was having a sexual relationship with was going to go with her in that car. So instead he goes and now cuts off the electricity so then they can't start the car. Then he hides behind the bush, waits for his grandmother to leave to work. Then he goes up there, pretends like he is hugging his cousin. He was a black belt karate guy, so he knew how to make somebody go unconscious in a second after, when he hugs them. Hugs her, makes her go unconscious, picks up her phone, uses her thumb to unlock it, and types a suicide note from her phone, picks up the kitchen knife, puts it in her throat, tries to kill her. He misses the main artery by like, I don't know, a 0.000 something, centimeter.
Carotid artery.
And she survives. So she wakes up, she pulls the knife from her throat and somehow crawls. And I mean, you can just imagine the gushing blood everywhere in the house, crawls out of her apartment building. Neighbor calls 911. When they get there, she hadn't had oxygen to her brain. So she's not herself. She's bleeding out. So they tell her what happened. And she says, it's a dream. It's a dream. I'm dreaming. So she's talking like a lunatic, right? And then they see the phone where she texted a suicide note. So they think she killed herself. So they put her in what's called a 5150 hold. They take her to the loony bin and keep her there for 72 hours, thinking that she tried to kill herself. It wasn't until the street cameras showed roughly the time, showing the cousin running away from her home at a time that he shouldn't have been there, that finally they realized this wasn't a suicide. Because once she was conscious and normal, she kept telling them, I didn't do this to myself. He was there. And he had denied being there. And there was absolutely no trace of him there.
So
except for the cameras.
Street cameras caught it.
Street cameras caught it.
He didn't have his phone on him?
He had every protection there is. I don't know if he had his phone, but he had turned off GPS. There was no way of finding him other than the cameras.
Jeez. Talk about a lucky girl, man. She would have basically, they would have labeled her as an insane.
Yeah.
What did they give him?
I prosecuted him for attempted murder, and he is now doing life. But he will have the possibility of parole because she didn't die.
And how old were they?
How old? He was 20, I think, 3, 4 at the time, I want to say. She was like 20.
At the end of the day, he didn't kill her.
At the end of the day, he didn't kill her.
I had to throw it out.
Guys, there's Bumble, there's Tinder, there's so many other websites you can go to. Don't date your cousin.
And shit, we might do a speed dating seminar.
Seminar.
What else do you want to call it?
Event. Seminar. What's a speed dating seminar?
I don't know. That's the first word that came to me. I don't know. I really don't know.
At the end of the day, it's an event.
It's been a very long day.
Has it?
Just a tad bit.
I thought this is what you want to do for a living.
It is. It is what I want to do for a living. Do we have any comments, any questions before we call it a night?
No.
He's like, no.
Well, we want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday to be with us. We really, really do appreciate it. We'll definitely have you back in the near future as well.
It was my pleasure. It was fun.
Yeah, guys, today's episode. Yes, go ahead.
But can I give a shout out before you guys finalize
Absolutely,
it?
go ahead.
No, you can't.
Armand is the best civil attorney in the planet.
Armand who?
Gregorian.
You're
Your
PR
sponsor.
attorney.
Your sponsor, literally one of the best attorneys out there.
Really?
One of the best civil
You
attorneys.
hear that, Armand?
I'm going to give him a shout out. because he deserves it.
818-404-0333.
Yeah, you got in a car collision, anything PI related, you got to call him.
Guys, like, when we talk about texting him, I swear, go text him right now.
Text him a picture.
Don't text him a picture
Why not?
because we don't know what kind of.
Okay, appropriate picture. Why does your mind go somewhere
Because
else?
you say it. Anytime, again, I'm not going to get into our group text
Jeez.
messages, but anyways, guys, today's show will be up and running on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all major platforms mañana. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys all next Monday.